Playtime is over. Get your Prepared Mind merchandise to show your support for the channel, stop censorship, and to tell YouTube they can smoke it. Get prepared now.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. I'm filming this Sunday night. The markets have opened. Everything seems relatively calm, but it's started again. And I don't want to seem like an incurable skeptic, but there are no coincidences. Nothing happens in this world by accident. Nothing at all. There are no accidental wars. There's no accidental terrorism. And in cases where things are organic, where it's someone acting on their own, lone wolf or just some other guy, a regular little person or group who has their own agenda, it's not a big deal. It's not useful to the powers that be. You know, we can go back and look in history, and I'm not just an incurable skeptic. I'm not cynical about this. There are facts that support the idea, all the ideas, that everything is done for a reason. An agenda is being played out. Let's take World War I, for example. We had the Ottoman Empire in the south, and then we had Europe up north, and everyone was picking sides. What was the fight about? What started all of that? It didn't really have anything to do with the Archduke Ferdinand or Fernandez or whatever the hell that guy's name was. It had nothing to do with anything. What was going on was a battle, a quest, a fight for resources, a consolidation of power, needing to bring a world order out of what was going on. Because everyone was vying imperialistically to chew up provinces. And there were three factions, it appeared. There was an east, a west, and of course a south. What was happening is the countries, the powers that be at that time, were fighting over resources. It's always about expanding the power base, making sure natural resources were available so that countries could define what their strategy was going to be by manufacturing. You know, expansionism, global expansionism, economic expansion. In fact, you know, what's your gross domestic product going to be? If you don't have the resources, how can you grow? So when we look at what happens in the world, we need to stop looking at it as, well, North Korea is full of little assholes with bad haircuts. You know, that's not what the real game is about. The problem the United States has with North Korea has to do with money, power, and control. It's always about money, power, and control. There was a problem in the early 90s. There was a problem with the rise of the militia movement, which was anti-big government, pro-constitution. It wasn't an accident that something happened at Waco. It wasn't an accident that something happened at Ruby Ridge. And it was definitely no accident what happened in Oklahoma City during the bombing. Those events occurred to let the militias know that they could be squashed and to show the rest of America that the militias were dangerous. What did that do? It reconsolidated the United States government's position with its people that it was the proper authority and that it shouldn't be questioned. Every move that's made is done with a purpose. 9/11 was not a well-organized Muslim terrorist attack. That can be shown and demonstrated by any number. Go onto the internet and check out 9/11 conspiracies. They explain everything. The research has been done. But that is okay. That's off to the side. The government took what it needed from that. It scared the living shit out of the American people, and it used that event as the impetus, as the drive to start the war on terror. which came about 15 years after the war on drugs to consolidate drug power in Central America. Right? The war on drugs was to get rid of competitive cartels so that the government could then funnel those drugs up and fund their operations, those who controlled that power. There's a problem, though, with the Middle East. There's a problem there back when 9/11 happened. Iraq was getting out of hand. Iraq was starting to disobey. Iraq was not benefiting the powers that be, that is the banking structure. So 9/11 happened. We went to war with Saddam Hussein. He had nothing to do with 9/11, yet we went in there and rolled on through. That was the excuse, weapons of mass destruction. Then we went into Afghanistan, another country. Why? If the Taliban was there, you remove the Taliban, set up a government, and move on. Or let them set up a government and move on. Instead, we ended up being an occupying force, guarding the poppy fields, and having a war that is still ongoing. And then we were told this war on terror, it would never end. It was never ending. That's what the American people were told. Why? The question why keeps coming to my mind. It's because they need to consolidate their power. The powers that be, they need to ensure nobody is going to economically fight them. They need to let the people know who the authority is around the world, the authority figures. Right? Who's got the big red button? They need to secure resources. Every war that is fought, every war is in all truth a banker's war. It is the military-industrial complex who gain out of war, and it is the bankers. Right? The companies that manufacture firearms and all the supplies and all the equipment, they are war profiteers. That is, they benefit from war. It used to be that if you were a company, you were not allowed to profit during wartime. You could manufacture goods and sell them, but make no profits. It's not that way anymore. It's all about the profit. It's all about that. And then the bankers come in and set up their financing systems behind this. They set them up abroad, and they set them up here at home. Right now in this world, we're starting to see an economic meltdown. You know, I talk about the economy and shit hitting the fan a lot. Why? Because the two are inexorably linked together. War and money. War and business. War and banking. These things are all tied together always. And as our economy comes down, you can be assured that war is going to begin. That's the way it's always been. Right now we seem to be, to use a bad phrase, dodging a lot of bullets with war. North Korea, they keep promising that. And I keep hearing about it through back channels. And it keeps not happening. In fact, it appears that they're getting peace there right now. Peace does not benefit bankers. Wartime benefits bankers. Because countries have to borrow money to finance that extra expense of going to war. And countries have to buy extra equipment, pay more men. And especially today, technology is incredibly expensive. So, to solidify a nation's hold over a resource base, that is a country you're going to war with, right, in order to guarantee you'll get those resources for future profits, you have to go to war with them. That takes money, so that money is borrowed from banks. And then corporations sell equipment, and they make money. And wars are fought for that, and over that reason. Have you noticed that the wars we fight now, that doesn't necessarily involve killing a lot of people? Not the way the old wars were fought. Yet it's more expensive than ever. So war, modern warfare, isn't about killing. No. In fact, it's not even about breaking things the way it used to be. It used to be you go into another country, you destroy all their shit and break it, they can't survive and fight against you, and so you win. Now they want to leave the infrastructure in place. They don't want to kill a bunch of people. They just want regime change. See, it's not about killing people the way it was. It's not about blowing shit up the way it was, because then you have to pay to rebuild all that shit, all that infrastructure, buildings, manufacturing. You want to leave that intact. Availability for processing and refining, whatever resources are available, leave that intact. So that the country that's committing the war, the United States, for example, can come in, take over, put in a regime friendly to it, start extracting the resources, charge that company money, or that country money, to lend it money to finance its operation as it sells its resources off at very cheap rates. You see, all this is about money. Right now, though, our economies are sinking. Why? Because all the money is being sucked out of the people. The people at the top, the uber wealthy, they are so greedy now. They're so concerned about absorbing and taking everything that's available that there's not money going to anyone else. They're pulling the money out at such precipitous rates that the economies can't even run. The banks have now loaned so much money to government that the people can barely service the debt. You know, big business has told America, told the world, keep buying, buy on credit, go into debt to keep funding the economy that's making them so much money, to the point where it can no longer be supported. We're going to have economic collapse, and we're going to have war. It's going to benefit the super wealthy, it's going to benefit the banks, it's going to benefit the military-industrial complex. And what are we going to get as the people of the whole world? We're going to get shit hitting the fan. We are continuing to go that way at an ever-increasing rate, down a narrower and narrower path. There's only one direction this leads. You know, let's take a look at the automobile industry. People can't afford the cars. So you would think that they would stop making as many. But if the motor companies stop making automobiles, then they go out of business. Then we lose industry. Then we lose jobs. Right? And if the industry's gone and people can't finance anything, then there's no reason to borrow money. It's a domino effect of negativity. It's because the economic engine has been destroyed by greed. The government itself is destroying everything with its greed, with its taxes. Can you imagine a world where we weren't always going to war? Can you imagine a world where we weren't being taxed in order to provide for government jobs and welfare? Imagine what kind of world it would be that rather than buying debt from banks, we had wealth instead. Right? Instead of being convinced that you have to go into debt, you started accumulating wealth. The banks wouldn't be making money off us. They wouldn't be making money off the government if we weren't overspending. So this idea that governments can't balance their budget, that they can't operate within their means, it's not in the best interest of big business and big banking to do so. So who owns the government? Who controls it? Well, big business and banks. Who pays the bill? You and I, through the taxation system. So that is why savings is dissuaded. It's punished, in fact. You get no money on return, while inflation destroys the value of your dollars. In fact, right now, the value of the dollar is going lower and lower and lower. It's on its way down, which tells us the economy is on its way down. There's no one with any money to buy government bonds, which funds government activity. Right? This entire system is coming to a halt. And we, as the people, are broke. And our governments are broke, having all borrowed money from banks. And then what? Then we go to war. Why? To get more resources. Why? So that we can try and kickstart the economy again. They're going to need to do a reset. The banks and big business are going to have to consolidate their power, just like they did with World War I at the end, and World War II. And then the gold standard in 71. It's high time for another reset. Now, the interesting thing about the coming off the gold standard in the mid-70s is there wasn't an enormous crash. There wasn't an enormous war. But prior to that, about the same space of time, was World War II. And prior to that was World War I, where there was economic problems. There was a thirst for resources. There was a desire by the banking system and the military-industrial complex to get governments to buy their goods, whether it was guns or taking out loans. And it brought everyone into debt, governments and individuals. And the banks, they're not stupid. They learned exactly how this works. They understand the actions they need to take. What they're going to do is they're going to cause shit to hit the fan. Right? Only this time, World War III, possibly. Right? It could be a giant world war. Or it could be an internal meltdown, right, at the local level in every country. But what's going to happen? More than likely the same thing that happens every single time. There's a meltdown. There's a collapse. Then the system is reconstituted. A new currency is issued. Right? A new base is developed through which a country operates. Right? We came out of the Civil War and we became an industrialized nation. We came out of World War II, we became the space age. Then we became the technological revolution. Now we're the computer generation. Right? What comes next? Right? They're going to need to make a change, and there's going to be another economy afterwards. Sure, we all need food, shelter, clothing, medicine. We all need that, the Maslowian stuff. But what's going to drive the next economy? You know, a lot of people believe it's going to be robotics. Right? We're already seeing that. AI, artificial intelligence, and the creation of robots to do all the work. Well, that leaves me with a big problem right now. They can create factories that make robots, and they can make robots that will build more robots, and the robots can police us. There's something in this equation that really bothers me. As we move into this technological, space-age, computer technology-driven service industry, is with all these robots, what are we going to do with all the humans? We're not needed anymore. They've got all the resources pegged. They can fight the wars. In fact, they're going to technological AI armies and air force. They're not wanting the soldiers anymore. There's no need for a soldier or a super soldier. Because they're going to fight the wars with what? Atomic bombs kill the enemy. Drones kill the enemy. Right? As long as the enemy's out of the way, then the governments can go in and do what they want. But they don't need boots on the ground the way they used to. Right? It's not that kind of war anymore. But in each country, what do they need to do? Lower their population. Conspiracy theorists, guys like me, have been talking about for years how the Georgia Guidestones talk about lowering the human population to 500 million total on the whole planet. It's about 1/16 of the current population. Let's just say it's 12%. No, it's less than that. 8%. It's a tiny number compared to what it is now. But they need that population down. It's easier to control. They can take the population that's left and put it in mega super cities and free up the rest of the planet. But they don't need us anymore because robots are going to do everything. So who gets to live and who gets to die? Who's going to choose? I think some of that is going to be left up to basically natural selection. Who is most fit to live? Those who are smart enough? Those who are strong enough? How do we know for sure? We really don't. As preppers, our job for ourselves is to look out for ourselves, our family, our loved ones, our groups, and try and get through this calamity that's coming, this tribulation. Right? It's important, though, to understand that there's no accidents. There are no coincidences. The game plan that's being followed has been played again and again. They build up a system. It gets so top-heavy because of the lending that banks do that it starts to collapse. They need to rebuild it, so they reboot everything. There's a war, then a new system. And the powers that be reconsolidate, make sure they have all the power. And as they've done this in this nation, the United States, since the War of 1812, and especially since the Civil War, is tell the people that their rights are mere privileges. And they have slowly taken away our constitutional rights as their power has increased. We're to the point now where technology allows them to not need humans. Right? We are a human resource to the government. We're its tax base, but if they don't need us to work anymore, then we become the useless eaters. We become a threat to them. And they're going to need to get rid of us. They're going to need to have their wars and their collapse. And when everything comes back, there's going to be super corporations in place to control and manage the wealth and resources that are left. And the super wealthy are going to control it all for themselves. They're going to set up a new system. And the question is, are you and I going to be a part of it? Well, if we live through this, who knows? Who knows how this is going to play out? I just know that if I'm not fully prepared, if I don't understand why the powers that be do what they do, then I'm not going to be ready. I'm not going to have, the right perspective and mind frame when we go into this and work our way through it. Now, I don't want to be all doom and gloom, because there's one thing that's going on that's interesting. And maybe it's a ruse, but it seems like there is true internal squabbling in Washington, D.C., and indeed around the world. It appears that what Donald Trump and his administration are doing is causing real problems. It appears that the people who are behind the scenes, operating through who knows what corporations and what government institutions and what parts of the military, are not happy with what's being planned. They either know about it and they don't like it, or they're not really on the inside, but they can see what's being played, why, where, and how. That's the people in charge that are being told to do things. They're given orders, and they're not liking what they see the consequences will be. In other words, there's people on the inside who see what's coming, just like you and I do, and they're fighting back. They're the good guys. Right? There's people in the FBI who don't like what the people in charge of the FBI are doing. Same with the CIA. Same with the Pentagon. Same with all the bureaucracies. I can't believe that everyone in corporate America is a complete and total asshole and wants to see everyone else bilked and destroyed financially so that their company can put this much more money in the boss's pocket. They've got to see and understand what they're doing to our nation isn't in its best interest. And I think that's why this fight has begun. Rather than Hillary and her ilk just moving down the line, I think they're meeting great resistance now. And the fact that these morons, are also satanic pedophiles, doesn't help their cause. It doesn't get them a lot of sympathy votes, does it? Right? So as this disgusting beast system is being exposed, what does that tell us? That people are exposing it. And people are mightily afraid. They're scared to death. But they're still fighting. And there is a chance, and I don't want to say a snowball's chance in hell, but there's a chance that we can get through this without coming through it in a dystopian technocracy, that we can get through this and still be the people, and then reclaim our nation and our individual lives, and take the power out of the banking system, and once again make corporations servants of the people. That is, corporations do not exist for the benefit of just themselves, but rather for the benefit of the entire nation. Right? Corporations can't create monopolies and control industries and collude with other corporations. That power needs to be taken from them again, because they abuse it. And that's why, if you look back in corporate law, there was a time when they were very limited, very restricted. Not now. Now they run wholesale fashion, free across the land, destroying everything they can get their hands on. Consuming it, that is, at your expense. As we look out this week and we hear and see things going on in D.C., look at it not as a television show, but rather try and view it, the appearance of it, as the screams and yelling, the fighting we hear behind a door. We're just getting muffled sounds out of what's really happening. And know that what is going on there is going to affect us here in our individual lives. It is truly frightening to me. Because on the one hand, we've got shit hits the fan and everybody's going to die, look out. And the other one is shit hits the fan light, which is a lot of people are still going to die. It's going to be horribly difficult, but at least we might come out of this owning ourselves, finding once again that we can create our own government and control our government again, control the money supply, and stop living in complete squalor. That is debt. Right? Debt isn't wealth. You can't say, look at all this stuff I own, and then say, well, I actually don't own any of it. I've just taken a loan out on it. You own debt. Countries are powerful when they have a treasury, that is stored wealth. Savings is wealth. Mortgages are debt. Loans are debt. And notes are debt. T-bills are debt that the government has. We need to stop being a debtor nation and become a free nation. And that's done through a proper money supply, a true constitution, and justice. And right now, I think all of us are hoping that justice be served in D.C., that arrests are made, that the system is exposed, and then let the chips fall where they may as we straighten this mess up. Any way you look at it, you need to be ready with food, shelter, medicine, clothing, right? Everything. Means of self-defense. We need to have it all with our plan. Our plan. Because chance favors the prepared mind. The question is yours? I'll talk to you guys soon. As this week progresses, right, I'll be coming back at you with what's going on and why it's important as a prepper to understand it. I'll talk to you soon. Godspeed to you all.